Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
GreenIC was launched with a bold vision to modernize banana farming in India, integrating financing, agronomy, markets, and value-add production. Despite early traction and meaningful impact, its core reliance on lending without scalable downstream operations ultimately led to defaults and investor stress. The startup's shutdown highlights the challenges of sustaining fintech-centric agri-tech models and finding deep product-market fit in rural ecosystems. GreenIC co-founder Fariq Naushad takes us through his entrepreneurial journey and the powerful lessons that shaped him.
GreenIC began with an ambitious plan to transform banana farming in India. But as they moved on, the idea hit the turbulence, and for some reasons they had to close down. So today we have with us Fariq Naushad to tell us all about his journey and learnings that he had taken from this. Welcome, Fariq, and thank you so much for sparing time to come to us and sharing with us all the learnings and all the journey of yours, which could be very important to the people who are watching this.
In fact, thank you for having me.
I just wanted to understand, how does this begin in an entrepreneur or in maybe a youngster, that he starts to conceive ideas and tries to put them into practice, and how does it begin in the mind of a youngster?
So probably I think times have changed from my college times to now, but still maybe if I can recollect my times when I was in college. So I did engineering as my core degree, and so during those times unlike now, we never had a entrepreneur cell in our college where ideas are nourished, etc. So it was either a path where we choose to sit in placements, or the other option is like, if you have a large business of your family, you can go ahead and run it. So that is the kind of paths that come for any, or they go for higher studies. So that is the kind of path any college student would have at that time. So for me, I would say what was that. See, in my college time itself, I wanted to kind of do something different. Was the thought that I always had, wherein I wanted to create something of my own. Wherein, so I was mostly inspired by, so at that time the idols were Steve Jobs. The movie of Steve Jobs came in, and where he built a large company, etc.
So you were not amongst those people who had the idea of taking a good job as soon as the degree?
No, that was not there. So that slowly, so first year, luckily I had a group of friends also with me who wanted to kind of think different, and we always spoke about how we can build something, etc. So that was always the thought we had. So that was kind of a little off from the usual crowd that was there in college at that time. But doesn't mean that always, my dad, mom used to say that you have to sit in placements, etc. But unfortunately, for them, when I was not very interested for that. How I started perceiving ideas was that I wanted to build something, but I didn't know exactly what to do, when, how, capital, nothing. So there was no information of what, even whether should we register a private limited company, how do we even do that? So all this was kind of a big gray area for us. But in fact, at that time, we spoke a lot about hospitality as a industry. Me and my friends as a group, out of which one of my friend turned out to be my co-founder. We had this concept. So we heard about Dabbawalas at that time. In Mumbai, they have that homemakers food aggregating, and they sell it and make an extra. Anyway, you're cooking for 2 people. Why don't you cook for 2 more?
Yeah. So that Dabbawala concept is in itself a very, you can say, celebrity startup status it has.
Correct. So that actually led to a thought that, okay, why don't we have a homemakers platform? So luckily we had a common friend who was a very tech guy. So we built a platform. So a concept is very simple. We would aggregate homemakers food, for example, and it was more targeting the IT crowd that came to the city. So I was based in Kerala. So we had a testing in Trivandrum and Kochi as to the IT. It was emerging as a small IT hub, unlike not as much as Bangalore, but still there are a lot of people coming from Hyderabad, Mumbai, Bangalore, etc. to come.
So you could see the gap and you could see the opportunity there.
Correct.
And you came up with the right kind of resources to fill that gap.
Exactly.
You know?
And also one thing other we started with a few set of customers itself, because we had a senior of my college who was heading a IT company there. He had a 35 member team. He wanted snacks, which was very unique. He wanted to give something extra because hospitality was coming up. Because in a IT service company, all that matters is how you take care of your employees, how you give them food, etc. So they wanted something unique. So we got this customer. We thought, okay, why don't we start doing it? So we started with basic snacks as a first idea, where we aggregated 3-4 homemakers. So one was, we had a lady from Rajasthan who came. So she used to make very specific bikaneer kind of things. So that was one person we had. And we had a South Indian, a proper Tamil lady who was cooking South Indian meals. So we had this mix of homemakers who came together and we started selling, to IT parks, etc. That was so we raised also some money for that through some friends and family, etc. We raised around 5-10 lakhs and we started experimenting it.
So you were quite ahead of your times, this idea itself was
was back in even before Swiggy came. And Zomato was there, but then even before Swiggy came in 2014.
So ever since you've been having this entrepreneurial, mindset, which, propelled you in your life.
Yeah.
So now coming to the Greenic part of your life. So what was the vision behind Greenic and how it stood out as, in a special category in agri-tech area?
So Greenic, I would say, it is agriculture as a sector, and I am my background from agri is zero. So which means I never, the maximum I went close is when I would have actually bought some vegetables before starting Greenic. That is my exposure to agri, I would say, frankly. So, but it was a very accidental thing because post that food delivery startup, I was in Africa for a while. We had an IT software service company, which we exited 2019. I came back. So I was in search of kind of new ideas because I had a gap from India like 2-3 years. So see what was trending. So then we came to a news that Indian government was banning single-use plastics. So that time my co-founder had an idea that he was visiting his hometown. That time, this papaya as a tree, they have these petioles that they dry and fall out every 2 to 3 weeks, which means that petioles is naturally hollow. And that old times also we used to play with making bubbles. It has a kind of a nature of a straw. So our thought was, anyway, India is the largest papaya producer in the world. There's a lot of papaya belts available. So why not convert this raw material into a straw? What started as a basic idea, and luckily what happened was that the Tata Social Enterprise Challenge happened in IIM Calcutta. That happens every year. So we applied for the 1920 edition and we got shortlisted. And then eventually we got into the top 10 and we won the top 3 in the country for this idea. And that was the first entry and we got a grant of around 1.5 lakhs. So that was the first entry to this agri as a sector. And post which, but then COVID hit, so couldn't take this project as such to a scale because hospitality sector itself came to a down kind of a thing. But what happened was that we were covered by a lot of good PR articles. So what happened was that people kind of assumed that since we were dealing with papayas, they thought we sell papayas also. We got a lot of calls asking whether you have papayas as such. Can you give us 10 boxes of papayas, etc. So then that clicked and we thought, okay, why not start with it? Because we are anyway in touch with a lot of papaya farmers because we were collecting raw materials kind of. I think we have explored a lot in that papaya as a crop. So that is when it converted and we started trading slowly. Then we started with a B2C kind of a model, eventually pivoted to B2B. But the differentiation came when, agri was booming at that time and large companies like NinjaCut all kind of raised 100 million large round from Tiger Global. That happened during that time. And we understood it's the right time for agri because investors were heavily betting on it. But what we wanted was a different story. So we came up with the first concept of going very deep in a crop. So which means we understood India is, every crop is $1 billion opportunity in India. If we focus just on one crop fully and provide a full stack, there is enough large space to build a large company. So that was a thesis behind Greenic where we went and finalized that. Okay, why don't we? And banana came up because again, India is the largest producer of banana in the world. There's a lot of gaps between exports of Indian bananas versus bananas from Philippines, etc. So we thought that is a good market to tap. So that was the first story that that is how that transformation of Greenic emerged into this idea.
So how did you identify these gaps between, agronomy and agri-tech and value-added products and the produce itself how did you address those gaps and turn this into a business?
Correct. So that happened was when the central government has a program, that BIRAC. They have a program known as Sparsh. It's a fellowship program that 18 months you have to pick up 2-3 problem statements, and you are given the opportunity to go meet on the ground, understand the real problems and come up with. So that opportunity really helped me, because that was COVID time, because we were allowed to travel because we were in this sector. I utilized that to the max possible, wherein I went on the ground, especially covering South India as a region, went ahead and understood what exactly the problem statements are. So that is which helped me understand that what is the number of stakeholders in the value chain, where are the real gaps that is kind of there. So all that came up when during this visit, where I went to the ground and I met farmers, we went to dealers, we understood how auction works. So auction, the biggest thing is that they don't speak. They just use actions where the one guy keeps increasing the price 70, 80, 90, it goes on like that. So those were things which we understood where how this entire thing happens. So that is when I really immersed into the problem statement.
So when you actually hit the ground, you were able to not only identify the gaps and problems, but you were also able to come up with tangible solutions or probable solutions.
Correct.
So what solutions were these, and how did you turn those solutions into an enterprise and started helping the farming community?
See, the trade, what happens in a way in agri was that, so there are like large buyers which are large B2B buyers. For example, if it's banana, there are large chips manufacturers who purchase in bulk. Then there are large exporters, then these large wholesalers so what it works is that in a farm area, there are small aggregators who are people who handle like 50 to 100 farmers, and these farmers will only sell to them. So produce usually goes via them. It is very highly unlikely that a new player can come and disrupt that. So that is already a built value chain. So we understood that flow, that produce comes to the aggregator first, and then it goes to the local mandi. From the mandi, it is either transported to a end destination, which is usually a consuming area. And from there, it comes to the largest mandi there. Then it goes to the local wholesalers, retailers, and consumers. So this is the value chain that we understood. So in this, we understood there are 5 to 6 different layers of people where the produce is being handed over. So we understood that for a fact, and these guys are highly unreliable. For any good exporter or a manufacturer, these guys are highly unreliable because they would give to whomever is giving you the best price. So there's no commitment for them. But these chips manufacturing guys have a problem that they have to have production every day consistently. That is when they make money. Exporters have a commitment to the export people where they have to sell it no matter what.
Yeah, you have to stick to all the timelines.
Exactly. And this is heavily timeline driven. For example, if there is a festival, for example, in Saudi, Middle East, if it's Ramzan time, the stock has to reach at that time so that you can sell it at a very good price. So we understood this gap where professionalism matters, which is when we as a company went and told that, okay, we are there here, we'll take care of your entire demand. We'll do all the procurement, including quality control, supply chain, etc. That is when the first gap, which we assumed that was a problem, and that is how we started solving, where we took up this contract from the large guys, went to the farmhouse, farm gates, set up a small enablement center, which is our local center that builds trust, aggregated all the farmers and the aggregators, and started producing from them. That was the first basic thing which we did, which was bridging this gap. And that is how the first step of trading started.
In this journey, can you share with us some examples or something which you thought you're really making an impact? Anything which really made a great impact that you would like to share with us? Okay, this is how you were changing lives, and this is how it was actually benefiting people on ground.
Few incidents. What I would say is that, see, the farmer in India, the concept is that every farmer in India, majority of them are small landholding farmers. So they basically have like 2 to 1 hectare, 2 to 3 acres is the average size of any farmer in the category. So the amount of income that they make in whatsoever cases that you look at is that, for example, if it's bananas case, they spend around 1.5-2 lakhs every year, and it's a 18-month crop cycle, 15 to 18 months crop cycle, and they make 3 lakhs out of it. So average, they're making 2 lakhs every year. So you can imagine the amount of income which is barely feeding their thing. So we understood, and heavily what they struggle with is that since there are a lot of government schemes that come up, they were trained and taught in a way to default these because every 5 years government is going to change and this is going to be written off. So it is not there. The community itself has made up a thing that you can take 1 lakh loan and then you can easily default. No one is going to question.
Just forget about it.
So which means there is no CIBIL for them. There is no CIBIL as such existing for them. And there we understood is that, so this discipline, it's not that they don't have the intent to pay. They are paying all the local loan sharks whom they depend on. They are heavily relying on them and they charge crazy rates of 8 to
Exorbitant
10%.
amounts. Yeah.
So one thing which, see, I'm not telling we could create a large of impact there, but what we could facilitate as a change is that we could train a certain set of community of farmers to ensure that, see boss, coming digital has a lot of other benefits, because anyway this is tax free. So how much of profit you make, you are exempted from it. And majority of the new buyers are willing to give willing to give online payments. So why don't you kind of accept that fact and start moving? So that was the first kind of a change where we started bank accounts, where we tried to help them transact everything digitally, wherein we can take you to NBFC like Samunnati and Avanti, etc., which specifically gives crop loans. Problem is that there is no data to underwrite. So this was the first level of thing where we could move their transactions, because see, and the bait we gave was that if you move this, you're going to get loans at good rates, not 70-80%. You may start at 20-24%, but eventually you can come down to 18, 16, 17 if you're paying good. So this was a kind of a thing which we could change in a the most biggest change, I would say, because finance is the ultimate key thing, right, for every farmer to increase his crop yield, acreage, etc.
So in your business, you were relying heavily on lending the farmers. So at what point did you realize that it might be, difficult to scale up or difficult to, even get hold of these people who are not into habit of, paying back?
So what happened was that I would say we didn't start lending. So lending came naturally because we understood, we actually wanted one hook point in which the farmers is going to be with us.
So lending was a hook.
So lending was a hook where we understood is that, see, they're struggling to get loans because normally no bank is going to give a loan to a farmer. So the only option they have is to rely on the local loan sharks or any of the local micro lending people who charge very crazy rates. And so there is no other formal option for them. So lending was a hook which eventually converted into a thing that, because the trading business which I told eventually, we assumed that this pain point exists for these people, where we mentioned that there is a large aggregator who wants to get consistent supply. That existed, but are they willing to pay a premium for it? No. They wanted all this right time. They wanted the produce. They wanted quality items. They wanted professionalism, no rejection, everything they wanted. But are they willing to pay 1 rupee extra? No. So that is when the catch happened. We are doing all this effort, still making 1 rupee per kg. We are not able to charge more, because the moment we charge more, then they are telling, no, we'll go back to the old dealer. So the problem there was that the margins were very razor thin for us to operate, where we had great data analysts in the team looking at price matching. We had an office team running it. We had a procurement team. We had an on-site team. So this was more to be run by a 1 or 2 father and a son duo, rather than a corporate coming in, because you cannot make more margins. How much of a data you bring in, TK sir, everything is good. We're going to give price prediction as a service. They liked it, but are you willing to pay? No. So this is what eventually converted us to move to a fact. So that is when trading had to come to a halt. So that is when I assume that, see, a lot of problems that we see are real problems, but are we the right ones to solve it? And is anyone going to pay for it is very important. No, problem is there and we have a solution. Now, are you going to pay extra for all the efforts and service I'm giving is a question which...
So the market is not responding actually.
Exactly. So market wants the service, so which means it is a good to have. But without this, they'll still go to the dealer and take. It is not a do or die where, if Greenic is not supplying me bananas, there are 100 people who are supplying bananas. Just that the professionalism won't exist. But later we realized those kind of people, that is why they survive. So if we go to the market here, everyone is making huge money. No one is in loss. But all the agri-techs are going into loss because of a certain reason. Because we operate in a very different corporate way, which this sector doesn't demand. The sector needs a very brutal,
So what do you think is the way forward if this is the scenario? How can agri-tech sector beat up these challenges?
So what I have seen is that any trading related agri-techs, if you see, have eventually, any large, I'm not mentioning any names, any large players that you see who have raised 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, have eventually accepted the fact that trading is not something which can really make money, especially for perishables. For non-perishables, there are good agri-techs who are doing, because ultimately there is nothing. See, today you are not ready to pay me the price. Okay, chalo, I'll take the stuff back. I'll keep it in my warehouse. I'll give it tomorrow. But for bananas, you cannot do it. For tomatoes, you cannot do it. So perishables mein, the thing is that any company that has done trading as a one of the business lines have got huge GMVs, they've clocked huge revenues, but they've struggled to make money in the bottom line. So the way forward, so companies that have done really well is companies that have a tech angle where they are focused on one problem. For example, there is a company known as Eruvaka which exited this Omniverse portfolio. They have built a shrimp farming, they have built an IoT device. So the fact there is shrimp farming is actually a very good margin business. So there it makes sense for an IoT device to operate and the farmer can pay for it. But for banana, if I go give an IoT device, already the farmer is getting, already the market price is 20 rupees per kg. The cost of production is 8 to 10 rupees. He's only making 20,000 every month. How can he pay for the... So those are crops to crop. It really varies where, what solution can actually work.
So amidst all this, what was the point when you people realized, okay, I think we should move out? What was that last straw on the camel's back?
So last thing was that I understood for a fact that agri tech as a sector was losing interest from investor side. By the time we have scaled up, we reached a certain level, we could scale up the GMVs. We were really we were growing as such. It was not that we were not growing, but difficult to make money on the bottom line because of margins were very razor thin, and we had wastage coming on one side, loan defaults happening on the other side. But still, the tip point was that I understood to scale this more. Either I wanted to raise massive capital where I can register as an NBFC, where I can formally lend, where I have more control over the money that I'm making from the margin difference of the working capital, of the cost of capital versus the lending cost that I'm doing. Or I should be able to get into the farming as such, where I'm involved in farming, where I have control of the produce. Which I understood for a fact that raising money more is practically, realistically not possible. Because agri-tech sector, no one was touching agri as a sector. Moment you say agri as a sector, there was a lot of, we tried close to 8 to 9 months, we ran simultaneously for fundraising. We raised also capital at the end, but it was not enough to, then what I could have done is that I could have done a low revenue, cut down all the burn, did a low revenue, danda kind of a business.
But that doesn't really
make sense for anyone who invested.
Yeah. And not even for your own self, because you would want to grow.
Exactly.
That is the whole point.
And no one invested to build a small danda business where I'm doing 1 rupee ka margin trade, because investors who invested in this wanted to get a high returns on their investment. So it's equally wasting their time, wasting my time also.
Yeah.
So we understood for a fact that pulling the plug was the best decision that can be done at that point for everyone involved, instead of keeping on.
Right. So as you just said, there might be a better situation if you have the control of the entire supply chain, entire value chain, having your own farms and having your own produce and all. So today, if you have to go back and start this again, what changes will you make, or how differently will you do it, keeping all these learnings in mind?
First thing what I would say is that I would have picked up capital from the right people to do farming. So venture capital industry as such, it's not their mistake, but VC as a model operates in a power law kind of a method, you would know. So it is more like one investment is going to give up the entire return of the fund. It has now changed. It is more blended to a PE model where returns are little more, where they are also more cautious now. But capex heavy businesses are little, where VC stay away from to the best possible. Capex heavy investments is something which they don't do. So the first thing is that for farming as such, if you are going to get involved in the value chain and do farming, VC is not the right capital for you. Probably you should look at a business where you are going to raise it from a angel group, you're going to raise debt capital, because you are going to farm, get the produce back, sell it at a margin and pay back the cost of capital and keep the profits for you. As simple as that. So if that is the case, first thing is that the capital that I'm choosing would be very, very, very different. Second, I would be part of because people are already doing farming. The only way you have control of produce in India is if you've actually put the seed. If you have put money in your land or in a leased land, that is when you have control over the produce. Otherwise, rest everything is on paper, because even the farmers, they say that we have given you half the money for produce. When he gets a good margin, he'll sell it to them and he'll say, sir, I'll give you this later. You can do nothing for it. In India, you cannot do anything for it. And that has happened to many people. So that is one big thing which I would do, is that if you're really getting into perishables, have your own supply chain. Scale would be lesser, but margins are enough. You may be able to sell to better countries at better margins if you have the right quality and produce, and you may have to control it. And it's a cycle. So 1 year you might get very good price, second year you might lose some, but it's a long play. It's a long patient play where you have the patience to wait for, because each crop cycle is 18 months. So you have to have that patience of 5 to 6 cycles to really make a 100 crore top line business where you invest 5-10 years on it, enough capital, you should have the passion for it. And that is a very different route altogether. This platform play will not work is what, in very simple terms, which I understood. Because none of the platforms are existing in Agri that is there. So that itself is a proof, right? I mean,
So when you had to pull the plug and when you had to come out of it, how did you deal with it personally or emotionally?
I might say it was all, but it was a very difficult choice because you are taking not just a decision for yourself, you are taking a decision for a set of employees that was working, your set of investors who believed in you, and a whole sort of people who had this trust that this is going to do something, etc. So even though I closed, I had to pull the plug 100 times. I've already done it inside, but to do it, it actually took me some time. To really send out that email, winding down email was, something which took a lot of time of thinking, multiple mentor talks, etc. I had to ask a lot of people, but then ultimately then I understood. See, everyone's suggestion is there is no right or wrong. If you want, you can continue, but continue at what cost and where are you reaching? So that was a very little downtime moment where and biggest question for a founder is that what next is. So that I didn't even think unless and until I sent down the email because I didn't know what to do next. So those are multiple emotions which I was navigating through.
So after winding down, after coming out of this, so you obviously thought of a new beginning. So what that thought was, what that idea was, okay, now let me go into this direction and do this.
While the wind down process was happening and we decided to pull the plug, I frankly didn't have any new set of ideas because my thought was that I need to actually settle down a bit before I jump from one to another. I thought of actually taking some time off for myself before I go into anything. So what I did was that I went for in Indian School of Business, there was a venture capital private equity program. So I just rolled into that just to keep me fresh and going. So that was one thing which I did post that. Second thing which I was very clear is that, one thing I understood, I started believing in a very capitalistic mindset where I understood is that 80-90% of the problems that is happening in a business can be solved if the business fundamentals are right, can be solved if you have the right capital at the right time. That is the only thing that if you see any businesses closing, there might be internal issues, team issues, but everything can be solved with capital. You have a team problem, you can change the team if you have capital. If you have a working capital issue, with capital you can increase your top line. With capital you can do any changes, structural changes. Any project failed, chalo, write it off. Do the next one, do the next experiment. But how long is a question, right? How long can you keep experimenting if things are not working? Infinite capital will also not help. That is a hard fact truth. So area that I was working towards was to see how I can use my experience to see whether we can bring in a source of capital together. That started and emerged as what Money Conclave came up, which was, the idea was from two of my current shareholders who were there. They had this idea of building a fund, etc. But when we all aligned together, we understood is that capital is important for anyone. So today, if I have an idea, I have people who can write a check. But unfortunately, I am not planning to do anything very soon. I'm still figuring out what to do. But today, I've reached a stage where if I'm bringing something to anyone, I have 15-20 lakhs ka bet. I have people to take. So that was one path of way which I wanted to go, where I wanted to ensure, because many people I've seen have a lot of ideas, but the only problem which is stopping them is execution. Execution means capital. They need some X money to test it out.
So tell us about this Money Conclave idea of yours. How does it work and how does it help? And what do you aim to achieve through this?
So Money Conclave is basically an investment platform. So we had this idea that, venture capital, private equity, they work in so venture capital, we understood is that VC as a system, as the industry as such has evolved to a stage where the entire dynamics have changed. It's not the old, now even VCs don't believe in the power law kind of a thing where they get like 100x, 200x returns. They have also come to very realistic numbers and figures where they have figured out that, right now let us back people with fundamentals. Let us go back to the old roots. IM degrees doesn't really help. It should really work in the ground. So we understood that capital as a exposure is itself shifting because none of the LPs got the money back in the past recent time. Many people have lost capital also. Many people are still figuring out. But there are good funds also that are operating. But we understood that there is a scope to have a good investment platform that really focus on business fundamentals. So thought we had for Money Conclave was that, see, there are a lot of people who have a extra good HNIs who have 1 or 2 crores coming out every year out of their cash flow, where they can use it to put as some bet. So that is after all their expenses, their primary investments of real estate, mutual fund, etc. They still have some cash flow coming in, which ideally they don't know what to do. So what they really do is they go into peer pressure. Someone refers someone, they go put money there. Some family member tells something, they go put money there. But there is no structured way of doing it. I mean, the good LPs institutions have multiple options where they have advisors, wealth managers, etc. But I'm talking about like mid HNIs who have extra cash flow coming up, but really don't know. So that is the concept behind Money Conclave, where we wanted to bring a group of people, wealthy HNIs together, make it a kind of a platform for now. Maybe later we'll convert to a fund. But for now, what we've done is very close group investments where we don't collect the pool the capital, money, nothing. They invest directly, but we bring in good opportunities to them. So it can be a SME opportunity. So it can be a AI startup. So it can be a hospital or a health tech deal. So it can be anything. So there is no restriction. So what we are trying to break is the old thesis-driven approach, where we only invest in a tech, where we only do fintech. See, that focus is good, but we think is that there is an option to invest across opportunities. Whichever is the right opportunity, grab it. If we have a good team to execute and plan and invest capital, you can make it big. So that is the concept behind Monica, and that is not a full-time primary thing which we are trying to do. That is on the side as one. So I'm still looking for the next thing. So what has happened is that since due to the maturity, what has happened is that any idea that come in, I go very deep into it. And until I can see that horizon, I don't start. So that is one thing which has been stopping from executing fast. So I'm just taking my time to figure out from the 2-3 ideas which I've shortlisted and is still working on the.
So till the time that happens, what you're doing right now is putting smart money in the hands of smart people with smart ideas.
Exactly.
Through Money Conclave, right?
Exactly. That is a simple idea. So which means any time we have a new idea coming up, there is a group of 50 people whom I can bring in and raise money and execute as needed.
So I can see, primary idea going down, it has not deterred you from moving forward. You venture into something new, and not only venture into something new, but venture into something which is actually helping out others, not only startups, but HNIs or maybe other investors. So that's a wonderful thing to do, I would say, a very courageous thing to do. So keeping that in mind, what advice or what message do you have for the youngsters, the new age entrepreneurs, to what to look forward to when they start their entrepreneurial journey, and not to be afraid of failure or not to be afraid of, not coming up trump in every situation?
See, right now, over the past 4-5 years, the opportunity which the new age entrepreneurs have is massive. In terms of starting from college, as you see the entrepreneurship cell that they have, which is supporting entrepreneurship to a great extent. So right now, being an entrepreneur is not something which has to be convinced you, or we have to convince your family. So there is a career to be made out of everything. You can be a blogger, you can be anything as a career to be made. When startup and everything is very cool, etc. I've seen a lot that is happening is that founders these days are not very realistic, and they kind of come up with an idea of something and they start waiting for that to happen in lot of times. But majority of the times the idea may or may not work. But what has happened is that if they can really iterate fast and move from the idea which they think can work. See, sometimes, for example, if I can say, recently I met a founder who wanted to build an NBFC for a very niche sector. NBFC, though, to start an NBFC, you need 10 crore net owned fund. And he has kept a projection that he's going to raise 20-25 crores as a first round on paper with a seed slide. See, I said, boss, that is very over ambitious. See, having a PPT slide, and he's not a banker also. He's not a son of a banker also. So from those lines, I feel that founders should be very realistic when they come up with such ideas, but nothing stops them from trying and executing. But I would say is that get into the first step of whatever you can start in your capacity. Start in that small approach. Maybe it can be a small Instagram channel where you start selling, picking up from someone. Okay, so that is okay. Start doing it there, so that gives you that experience of. So whenever you go to a person, you have a story to tell, where you are not telling a slide story, you are telling something tangible.
Actual story.
You're telling, I have sold like 50 furnitures in Instagram and I've made 1 lakh revenue. Okay, now I need more so that I can sell 100. So that comes up with a story where you can really, so I think starting somewhere is the actual way.
So testing the waters is, the first thing that they should be doing.
And in a realistic manner, so that, you're not dreaming something and telling that, okay, because, many of times I've seen, because since all of this gyan is there in the market, they try to resonate people who have done it. Because I've seen recently, I've met another young founder who was comparing that, Kunal Shah has done it. I said, see, boss, Kunal Shah has done it because that is a time he came up with, he had a 400 million exit. Him doing for cred is a different story than you. So that realistic approach has been missing, because, there is a lot of gyan happening in the market. It's high chance that they are going in an unrealistic path. The difficulty side of it is where, when founders go beyond their realistic thing and keep vegetating and thinking that this is going to happen, waste a lot of time.
So, being realistic is one of the traits that one must possess for sure to begin a startup or any enterprise. And how about tapping the right market, or tapping the right resources, or tapping the right kind of creating the right kind of value chain? How does a person navigate through without making a mistake?
So ideally, if you are able to execute in an area which you are aware of, for example, if I'm having a proper finance background, I'm a chartered accountant, or I'm a banker by say, me venturing into a NBFC space makes sense, because I know the nitty-gritty of it. I've done it. I've done all the process of handling at least that kind of a P&L. The advantage there is that you are going to make much lesser mistakes, because you are the person who's taking decisions in your early days and you really know what to achieve. So that is obviously, we call it founder market fit. So you versus what the market you're trying to tap in is one way where you can avoid a lot of early mistakes, where you don't do utter bullshit, where you go and pump in or lose a lot of capital in the initial days. That is something which you can, or at least have a co-founder who is having that. See, if you are very operations focused guy, okay, no problem. But if you're building a tech product, have a co-founder who can code. The advantage is that you are not depending on someone else too, because you will not have the money to pay anyone. So those are the first basic criteria, is that if your market is aligned to what you want to do, a lot of early mistakes can be avoided. And then it's figuring out one by one, because right now a lot of mentors are available. Everyone wants to advise someone. So that has also become very overhyped now. So if you don't go to the right people, that is also another thing where they ask for 5% equity, 10% equity. Vendors come and ask all of this.
So striking the right notes at all the given times is the right way to move forward,
correct,
right?
Exactly.
So Fariq, thank you so much for joining us today. And I think your conversation, your words of wisdom will have a deep impact on the viewers watching this, and they will learn what to do and what not to do, and how to courageously move on despite having setbacks. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
So guys, failure is not a failure if you consider it that way. It might be a stepping stone, or it might be a first step towards a grand success. Keep watching.